Well, it's that time of year now, the sun is shining and the water temperatures are at an all-time high, which means it's the perfect time for fishing in the edge. Now, margin fishing's got to be one of the most exciting ways of catching carp. You can watch the fish feeding in the edge, watching them pick up the rigs if the lake's clear enough, and there's nothing that's more exciting in my opinion. Now today I thought I'd run you through a typical mix that I use in the edge at this time of year. It's quite simple. And basically it consists of 3 items: pellet, boilies and a liquid. Now the way that I prepare it is, first things first, I'll add some halibut ultra mix into a bucket. Now the halibut ultra mix, not only is it infused with betaine, but it's really attractive in the summer months as well because of the oil content it has. Now the halibut ultra mix is 3 different sizes of pellet. You've got 4mm, 6mm and 8mm. What this means is you've got lots of different breakdown times in the swim and obviously different size food items as well. And throughout the summer months, a high oil pellet like the halibut ultra mix is definitely my go-to. Next up, I'll add my boilie of choice, which at this time of year is the Pacific tuna. Now I take some 15 millers and basically squash them up in between my fingers and make some really random and odd shapes. Not only does it keep the carp guessing, but also by squeezing the baits between your fingers, you're breaking that outer shell and releasing more attraction. Following on from the boilie theme, I'll also add some 10mm Pacific tuna. I've always been a fan of small baits, especially when fishing in the edge, because I want to keep them carp in the swim and grubbing around for as long as possible. So a good helping of 10mm will also go in there. And then to top it all off, I'll add a good glazing in the hot chorizo compound. Now this liquid's really spicy, really meaty, and I feel like it complements the Pacific tuna absolutely perfectly. And I've always been a massive fan of sort of like dark red fish meal baits, which the Pacific tuna is already, but adding that hot chorizo, it gives it that sort of even deeper, darker red tone. Once I've added all them ingredients into my bucket, I'll leave it for probably 2 to 3 hours, just so that liquid can draw into the bait. I normally leave the lid off the bucket. If I make it at home, I'll leave it in the garden in the sun for a bit, just so it dries into that bait a little bit quicker, or I'll make it up at the start of my session. And basically what that will do, all that liquid will draw into that bait, and you'll notice it'll become darker in appearance, like the mix that we've got here. I made it a couple of hours ago now, and it is looking prime and ready to go. Now, one of the benefits of using a mix like this, because it's got so many different size food items in there, you've got the pellets, all different sizes, you've got the chops and the 10 millers, it keeps the fish in the area for a long time, which is what you want when you're visually fishing for them in the edge. So generally at the start of my trip, I'll prime a load of different edge spots, and what I like to do is leapfrog between them, and 9 times out of 10, if they've been on the area, you'll see visual signs of that, or they'll still be there feeding. Now that I've introduced some bait onto some edge spots and hopefully got some fish feeding, it's time to have a little look at the rig. Now I use a D rig, which is tied using a semi-stiff hook link with a curved style hook. A big lead, as you can see there, 5 ounces, flat pair, so if I am fishing in the edge on a marginal slope or something like that, it's not going to roll down that shelf. But more importantly, the hook bait. Hook baits play a massive part of my edge fishing. And the reason behind this, as you can see there, there's a tuna airball wafter on there, but I've trimmed it down. So this was a 15 miller and I've whittled it down to a really odd, peculiar shape. That's because when I've watched carp feed, they can quite easily spit out 15mm boilies. Whereas if you whittle it down like I have here, it almost bobbles when they go to eject it, which means your hook bait and your rig is spending a lot more time in their mouth. One crucial thing I haven't mentioned yet about the rig is I've got a blob of putty about 1/3 of the way down the hook link. Now that serves one purpose and one purpose only. No, it's not to pin the hook link down. It's actually to allow the rig to kick away from the lead, eliminating any chance of a tangle. Now, because I've put it there, about 1/3 of the way down, probably 2 inches, what will happen is the lead will plummet down onto the bottom and then everything will follow suit. So the putty's the next heaviest thing because I've got a critically balanced hook bait. And then once the putty settles down, the rest of the rig will kick away and sit absolutely bang on. Now you'll notice as I'm holding it here, the hook is laying flat. Now that's exactly how I want it to act on the bottom, because it's a curved shank hook and it's got a straight point. So if I'm fishing over gravel or any sort of debris on the bottom that could potentially blunt that hook, if the rig sits point down, the chances are it's going to nick a bit of gravel and turn that point over, which is not what I want. The last thing to mention about the setup is line concealment. Now, as you can see here, I'm fishing mono straight through to the leg clip. So I want everything to be pinned down on the lake bed. And the way that I do that is just by adding a couple of blobs of putty. As you can see there, I've got one about 12 inches away from the leg clip and then another one a following 12 inches away. And what that does is just ensures everything's nailed to the lake bed, ensuring when them fish come in and feed, they're not going to brush up against your line and potentially spook off, ruining your chances. So there's a little insight into how I go about my edge fishing. It's a really exhilarating way of catching carp, and it is the perfect time of year to do so. Check out the colours on him. He is ace. Had 3 bites this trip. This one being second biggest, but definitely the nicest looking.